This content may contain material that could be distressing or triggering to some individuals, including, but not limited to, discussions of trauma, mental health, violence, abuse, or other sensitive topics. Please proceed with care.
At this point, hadn't sort of got a chance to think about what was really going to happen.
You ready for this?
Yeah, I didn't realise the real repercussions.
Yeah.
Because again, I mean, by this point, we're going 3.5 years. It was so normalised.
Yeah.
For me, it was like...
You were just bracing yourself every night now.
That's it. But it was so normalised that I just... And so many people around me knew and did nothing that in my head, it didn't really even feel like much was going to happen.
Yeah. At this point, it was more than just hands, right?
Yeah, well... Yes, because at the farm is when it was more than just hands.
Yeah, so there was sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So... to the point that...
before it all blew up?
Yeah. To the point that there was a believed pregnancy at one stage, which didn't happen, and it didn't happen, but there was a period where we thought, oh, shit, am I?
Yeah, because you were obviously menstruating.
Yeah. And he didn't take it further to that level until he found out that I had lost my virginity to someone else.
So just touching on that, you weren't going to school much then.
Yeah.
You said he wasn't working before, or he had a
No,
shoulder injury?
Yeah, he had a shoulder injury, so he wasn't working for most of that time, and when he did go back, it was light duties and a bit here and there because he worked in a factory.
Most of your time would have been at this shack.
Yeah.
Where was he? Was that
a lot of the time it was with
me?
With you? Yeah, a lot of the time he was there with me. To the point that... So
this wasn't just a nighttime thing?
No, I was going to say, it got to the point near the end where he stopped pretending he was asleep.
Yeah. So by the end, you mean before it blew up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Stopped pretending that he was asleep. But again, and when I say stop pretending he was asleep, he wasn't actively awake talking to me.
Yeah.
The eyes were still
closed.
But
he also wasn't hiding
it wasn't hidden so much anymore. And again, it was so normalised to me that I had got to a point of, here we go. I think the point of, like I say, that suspected potential, oh shit, am I pregnant moment, that was talked about between us. Plans were made. The child was named. It was a whole...
This would have been a kept pregnancy?
Yeah. Because again,
how did you feel about, when you first thought, I'm pregnant, or I could be pregnant?
It was I could be pregnant, and then
So there was no protection being used?
No. Or how...
At all?
What are you going to do? Put a condom on before you rape someone?
Well, I just thought, well, it's obviously making no secret now,
but... And it's not like I was put on the pill, because again...
I would have thought to avoid the pregnancy.
Why would you put your child on the pill for no reason? I mean, as much as now you would, now I look at my...
Now she's a girl that's menstruating.
Yeah, I was going to say, now I look at my children and think, okay, there's going to come an age where I'm going to go, do you want to do this?
Because I think if that was my husband, he'd probably say, should she be on the pill?
Exactly. But... in his eyes, I guess it was but if I go ahead and ask for the pill, people might question why.
Yeah, because now he's overthinking.
Exactly.
Now there's
more
there
happening. Was no protection.
Yeah.
And there was, like I said, obviously I wasn't pregnant, and there wasn't...
But the fact that he even wasn't even pulling out.
No.
Just that, and then you just get up and clean everything up, and just...
away we went.
Yeah.
Went on with our day. So, and it got to the point of... And abortion is not something... I'm not against it. That's not what it is. It's just not something for me. Mm-hmm. It's not something that I feel...
Even in this situation?
I don't think I had a chance to think about it in that situation. And honestly, it's not like...
It's not that you didn't have... Sorry. It's not that you didn't have a chance to think about it. It's that you weren't thinking because you were groomed.
There's that.
Your brain 100%. Was not your brain.
Exactly. There's that 100%. And there's also the fact that it's not like it was ever open for discussion.
And she's under 16.
Yeah. Well, 16, yeah. So when it came out, when it was like, oh shit, am I pregnant?
I've had sex before 15, and I've never thought, not that I've had unprotected sex, but I never thought, if something happens...
That's what I mean. What am I going to do?
Abortion? That's not
right.
a thought.
That's
let
right.
alone not knowing.
And that's what I was going to say, is that it's also that not only is it the fact that I'm not thinking straight because of the grooming and everything, but there's also the discussions were never... okay, so what are the options? The discussion when it came out that, oh shit, I might be pregnant, it was, okay, so this is what we'll do, and we'll have this child, and we'll...
And how did that discussion go with you to him to be like, hey, think I might?
Um,
Because he's even more aware now that...
it wasn't so... I don't even remember it being so much a discussion. It was sort of more... I really didn't feel well. I didn't feel well, and it was...
Did you think at any point I might be pregnant? Like,
it was that's what it came down to. To me, they were those early pregnancy symptoms. I mean, as I say, I was in high school. Those discussions were being had at school. You know, you sort of knew what to expect. And they were
never
those...
had a regular period either.
And I've never had a regular period, no. So
it's not like that's any indication.
that's it. It's not like it's like, oh, it's been a month. I can go 10 to 12 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, so for me, it's like if I haven't gone 6 weeks, and at this point I didn't realise how irregular I was either, being so young and still developing and still
fresh to
and
having a period.
that's right, you know, still learning my grasping
At this
my
point, I think
bearings.
you're just worried about the period pain.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
You're
Not
not,
when they come in.
that's it, you're not looking at the day. No, you're like, oh,
period
thank God
pain.
that's over.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
You know, so it had obviously been a while, me not realising how irregular I was and not even considering that, and starting to feel unwell and starting to feel lethargic and starting to feel, you know, all those early signs. It wasn't so much I think I'm pregnant. It was just as the days went on and we're going, I don't feel good. Like, things don't feel right. And that was kind of just the first assumption is, oh, shit, like, maybe that's what it is. So it's not that
he would know. He would know the signs.
Exactly. He's got 3 kids. Yeah. And again, it's not like I had to talk about it because we were living at the farm. It was just him and I. He was seeing that I didn't feel well.
You had another woman.
That's right.
Like, be like, hey, is this... That could be
That's right. Like, it was just... It was sort of... I think we just sort of both assumed at the same sort of time and just kind of went down that road naturally.
Like an unspoken conversation.
That's right. Exactly. And, you know, until it sort of came out of... It wasn't, okay, we should go and check and, you know, start looking at abortion. It was just, okay, so, you know, we'll raise this child out on the farm. Like, that was the discussion. There was no...
So he was worried that if he got you on the pill, people would ask questions, but nobody can ask questions about where this baby came from.
And as I say, he never told me
The
he was
thinking
worried
of
about
that
the
was
pill,
so
but that's the
bizarre.
assumption.
Yeah, but the thinking about that is so bizarre.
Yeah.
Like, I'd be worried about where this child came from before
Yeah.
I'm worried about putting him on the pill. Because at least then I could put my hand up
Yep.
if I was the groomer to say, I actually got her on the pill.
Yeah, that's it.
Why?
Like, exactly. Oh, you know, she's 16, chances are she's out with someone, so
Yeah.
I made sure
I would have made you out to be the root rat.
Yeah,
thing, you know?
exactly.
Well, she's 16, she's got a boyfriend,
that's
why
it.
wouldn't you not?
Exactly.
Like, that would have been the... Yeah.
Exactly. That makes more sense.
Then where did this baby come from?
Where did this baby come from?
Where this baby came from that also may have been born with some major deformities.
That's right.
Yeah.
Saying.
That's
Like,
right.
Yeah.
Visible.
And Tasmania is not
visible
big.
or invisible.
Tasmania is not big. People would talk in that community. Yeah.
Well, then again, as the saying goes,
People
Tasmanian are very inbred
Yeah.
as it is.
Yeah,
So. But, yeah, so that's... Yeah, that was that side of it. And then, like I said, obviously I wasn't, and, you know, life went on. But that's how that's how everything came out, was that, yeah, we spoke to everyone, and I remember it was really bizarre. Like, I remember going to the movies with my friends, and it was, for whatever reason, because we were, you know, a group of 6 or 8, you know, of us, and we all went to the movies, and I remember him ringing me while I was at the movies, and he just kept ringing, and I kept hanging up on him. Like, I'm in the middle of a movie.
Yeah.
And I messaged him, and I'm like, I'm in the middle of a movie. Like, what do you want? And he's like, no, you need to come out. It's urgent. I'm in the car park. I'm like, what the fuck? So I was like, well, can it wait? Like, I'm in the middle of... No, you've got to come out now. It's urgent. So I'm like, what do you want? He goes, I've got good news and bad news. And what are we now? 15 years later? Couldn't tell you what the good news was. Cannot remember what the good news was. I remember him saying, I've got good news and I've got bad news. Could not tell you what the good news was. Bad news was, you need to go home. Well, I need to take you home to pack a bag because you are going into care. And it was actually him who got to take me to the Office of Child Protective Services. I wasn't picked up by someone. It wasn't an extra family member. He got to pick me up from the cinema and take me to their office.
My heart rate going through the roof.
Yeah.
I'm like,
How?
how?
How did they know?
How
did anyone
know
know
that he would turn up?
Well,
Yeah, but-
he
But he wasn't going to bloody
bound.
bound you and put you in the boot and throw you into a river. But not only that, the groomer is taking her to docs, welfare, like, this is how kids fall through the system.
Yep.
He could have shut you up so easy and you could have disappeared.
If he was, obviously he was contacted and told, you know, bring her in.
Yeah.
What was his response when he was like,
I don't know.
What was his response?
I
Yeah,
don't
but
know.
why did they not send someone to the school, to the movie, like not to the
But it
movies, but
makes
to the
me think-
house?
It makes me think that his response was, "Yeah, I've done it. I'll bring her in. Don't
Yeah.
worry. I feel remorse. I feel guilt."
That's it. It would have been very much just let me do it. Like, I promise she'll be there. And there was a time frame, which is why he rushed me out of the movie. But it would have been very much, I'll do it. I'll be
But
there.
that I can't imagine the time frame would have been 15 minutes. But it's also 15 minutes is also enough to drug you, bound you, and throw
That's
you.
all it
in the boot of
takes.
the
Just
car.
go on, take her on the run even.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you could keep living this fantasy with her.
That's
Yeah.
right, because he did have a fantasy. He had a vision of him and I as this happy
In a
couple,
relationship.
potentially with a child.
Yeah.
I mean, this child didn't exist by this point. Like,
Yeah.
we knew that it wasn't. But
Yeah.
what I'm getting at is that, you know, like...
Tick, another fail.
So, somewhere along the lines, we did have Child Protective Services come to the house.
How nice of them.
But I wasn't there, and they were sent away and never came back.
Do better. Do better, people.
Like, so many opportunities. Over those 3 years, nearly 4 years, so many opportunities for it to have been stopped sooner. So many. Like, I look back now and I'm like, really, guys? Like, nobody thought to take it one step further?
Because I'm hearing this for the first time, and I'm like, we could have done this. We
Yeah.
could have done that. We could have intervened.
Yeah.
The only person was this teacher, thank God,
Yeah.
that did it in such a way that you were not
It
forced.
took longer, but it was done right.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it took longer, okay? But she was only going with what I was prepared to share with her
So
without jumping the gun and without making assumptions and making me comfortable.
she would have gotten a full story and a better story
That's right.
out of that. So when he came and collected you from the movies, this was after it had all gotten out.
Yeah, so as I say, it all came out.
Yep.
And it was within that very short time frame that I was picked up and
And nothing had happened. Had anything had been happening with you and him between you getting told and
yeah.
up until that? Still,
yeah,
he was still
up until the last minute.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And then again later, like because I came back.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, what kind of impact did the court case have on you as a teenager trying to finish school, make sense of it all? Because
There wasn't much of a court case.
there wasn't.
No, I believe there was 1 or 2 hearings before, and he was still loose, shall we say, living in the public.
So they didn't even hold him.
You flew back home.
Yeah, so when I was put into care, I was there for a couple of weeks while they tried to organise things. And in that time, my mum and stepdad...
So when they say care, you went back to your mum.
No, this was in like foster care. I was in the foster family.
Why did you not go back to your mum?
Because I didn't want to. I didn't want to be with my mum.
Okay.
And in those couple of weeks was my mum trying to convince me. My mum going, look, I just need to see that you're okay. I just need
She
some
would have
time
been
with you.
panicking.
Yeah, she goes, I just need some time with you. Why don't you come over? Just come for...
And she knew the story.
Yeah, at this point she had heard from the counsellor.
Yeah.
She's begging me. She's going, just come home for a bit. She goes, look, it doesn't even have to be for long. Just a couple of weeks. Like, I haven't seen you in all this time. Now I'm finding out what's going on. Like, just, if anything, just do it for me. Just come home.
I would have been on the plane.
And she's like, just come home. So in the end, I agreed to go for what I believed was just going to be a couple of weeks. And then I was going back to my friends and my life that I had in Tasmania. Like, in this
Finish
point,
school.
to finish school. That's right. This was happening through year 11. I still had another year of school. And, I had in my head that, okay, I'll go over there for a couple of weeks. Get on a plane, step off that plane, and have my phone taken off me, have my laptop taken off me by my mum. And I'm enrolled in school and have a job.
And there was no counselling for you in this point.
Nothing.
Did you... I imagine this didn't happen, given this reason. You didn't sit down and discuss, like, how are you? What's happening?
Nothing.
I feel dirty. Did you feel that? Shame or... Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know. Like, at this point...
Because I would have thought, what have I done?
No, see, that's just it. At this point, I was still protecting him. So I wasn't even telling everyone the truth.
Yeah, but when they were taking everything away from you, would you think, what have I done?
There was that moment of like, I didn't do anything wrong, surely, or did I? Like, and then there was that regret of why the fuck did I open my mouth?
Yeah.
Like, things were good. What have I done? Like, I've just blown everything. The boys are without their dad. He's going to end up in prison.
You're still thinking about...
Of course. And
So
not
why
only
would
that,
you
I know what happens to child abusers in prison. So, and he had also made it very well known, if I go to prison, I'm not coming out alive.
So you just, like, you touched on that. I know what happens to child abusers in prison.
Yeah.
Did you think of him as a child abuser? No. Or did you think he could fall in that category?
That's what he's going to be seen as.
Yeah.
Was it?
Not
It's
that he was.
It's not that that's what he is.
Yeah.
He is going to be seen as a child abuser.
Yeah,
and
because
I
he
know
touched a child.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's
as far as it went for me. And I know what happens to these people in prison, and I know that, you know, he's not going to come out alive, and the boys are going to be without their dad, and, you know, I've just blown everything out of the water, and now I'm back here, and now, you know, I'm going to be trapped here.
And especially going back to that and having everything taken off you. What a shit life now.
That's right. And that was because they didn't want me contacting him without them knowing.
Mm.
So what they ended up doing was setting up a restraining order.
Mind you, I think that's the right thing. Not
Oh!
contacting him without you knowing, but handled very poorly.
That's
yeah, I was going
right.
to say there should have been a sit down, how you're
Yeah,
feeling,
okay.
what's going on, before we take everything off you,
Yeah.
and maybe explain why we're taking everything off
Yeah.
you.
So...
Because you're thinking, I would be thinking, what have I done?
Yeah.
Like, now I've come here, taking all my good stuff off me.
That's
I can't
right.
contact
You've
my
taken
friends or
everything I
nothing.
wanted, and now more.
Yeah.
So, so basically that was, they ended up putting a restraining order between him and I.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I was turning 17. I think I spent that Christmas there. Yeah, I did. I spent that Christmas and my birthday there, so I turned 17 in WA. And I was over there for, it was about 4 or 5 months maybe. I know that I went back in March, so that's what I say, it must have been about October, November. And the restraining order was in place, and it could only be in place until I was 18 because it was placed as me as a child. After that, I would have had to redo it myself. So it was only going to be valid until I was 18. And I was in WA, and even with that restraining order in place, because I was working and I was going to small town, so I was able to go to town, I used to just ring him on a payphone.
I was going to say, was there still contact?
I used to ring him on a payphone.
Yeah.
Used to update him on what was going on.
And that would have just fed his ego, because he's like, this is what she wants.
That's right.
This is what I'm not
Exactly.
doing anything wrong here.
That's right. She's ringing me. So,
And he was still at home.
huh?
He was still at home.
So he was, he was still at home. So by this point, yeah, he wasn't staying at the farm. He was living at the house mostly. He still stayed at the farm sometimes. And my stepmom and brothers were at the house as well. But no, he was mostly living at the farm though. He
wasn't in custody as much.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. He was
like-
still free roaming the streets, like.
Yeah.
And as I say, there was only maybe 2 court hearings. Mum did say that.
And that would have been just to put the thing in place and stuff.
That was
like
just to
that.
discuss,
Yeah.
discuss what was going on, and there was no charges laid basically, and then. So as I say, I continued making phone calls, and then it got to the point that with contact with my stepmom, she agreed that if I wanted to go home, I could go home. So they organised, by this point I'd been there for 6 months, and I was living in the caravan. Mum and her husband had a caravan for me as a bedroom outside. I know, did you see the stutter? I know, not that it would have mattered, but I was living in the caravan, and 6 months as a teenager, I accumulated crap, so they organised a shipping container, to take all my stuff back to Tasmania.
Who's they?
My dad and stepmom.
Okay.
They organised flights for me to go back. Now, to get from Albany to Perth, you've got to get on the bus because it's a 6-hour
And what did your
bus
mum say
trip.
about all this?
She didn't know.
Oh,
All
okay,
of this
yeah,
is behind
right.
her back. So, shipping container, flights, bus trip. They sent me a phone because obviously I didn't have a phone. So, they sent me a phone to a friend's house.
I feel like I'm watching a movie.
Yeah.
It's
I
so
reckon we could make a good
so
movie.
undercover.
Sent me a phone and a SIM card all set up ready to a friend's house so that I could contact them without having to go to the payphones because obviously it wasn't always feasible. Plus I needed to organise myself a taxi to get from the house to the bus depot the morning of the bus. So all of this was happening without them having any idea.
And was you low-key excited about it?
Yeah,
Because you were going back?
I couldn't wait.
Yeah.
It's going back to my friends, goes back to
Yeah.
my brothers. The agreement was that I would stay with my stepmom and my brothers, and he was to stay living at the farm, and he wasn't to come to the house. And she wasn't going to be okay with any contact because of the restraining order. However,
But she also helped him.
but then she's like, look, if you have a phone call, I'm not going to stop you, but, you're not to be at the house at the same time. So, anyway, the shipping container people, the packaging people, they were organised to come and pick up the boxes and stuff while both my parents were at work, my mum and
Yeah.
mum and stepdad were at work. So, I stayed home, wagged the day, sent everything off, like nothing. They had no idea that the caravan was empty. Because I say, being in the caravan, I wasn't in the house.
Yeah.
They didn't come in.
Yeah.
Caravan was empty for only a day or two. And everything was gone. The day came for the flight, or for me to, get on the bus. And my stepdad worked out something was going on. And I had already called the taxi by this point to come. And they thought, something's going on.
Because as a teenager, at this point, I imagine you would have thought...
I'd love to know how... I'm going to say his name as well. I'd love to know what it was for him to be like, this is...
Yeah, because as a teenager, you think you're very inconspicuous. And
Yeah.
and I imagine that somebody would have went, that's a bit weird.
Yeah, and I
But
would
what
love
was
to
it?
know what.
Yeah.
Because,
I don't-
I know when I was that age and Mum
That's what I
would be
mean.
How was school? I'd be, yep, good.
Yeah.
And then she'd say something like,
That's
because
it.
because you didn't extend on what was happening, I know that something was on. And you're
Yeah.
like,
No, but I
how?
always would have done. Yep,
That's
good,
right.
because I'm just a teenager.
Yeah, but that's not, yeah, but I'm saying
Like,
that when your parents say something, it's always something silly. Like,
Yeah.
I remember I ragged school one time, and my mum turned around and said, because you wore the jumper that I bought you, and you hate that jumper.
Yeah.
I wore the jumper because it was actually cold, but I didn't think. I
You
didn't go to
wouldn't have
school. I
worn it to
ragged.
school. That's right.
But maybe I wouldn't have. I hadn't worn it to school, and I wore it
Yeah.
that because. But she picked up on that. I
Yeah.
didn't even pick up on that.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you think
I'd
you're
love
so
to know what it
inconspicuous,
was.
as a parent,
Something-
you're going, something's not right here.
Yeah.
But I would have loved to have known what it was.
Yeah. And I don't think he would even remember now if I asked him. But, so yeah, I'd organised the taxi to come. And actually, maybe that was what did it. Maybe the taxi turning up is what did it. That made them realise I had a phone. Because
you weren't even meant to have a phone.
I wasn't even meant to have a phone. Because the taxi turned up. No, let's just backtrack that. They didn't work it out. The taxi turned up. And I had said to them, I'm going back. And they went, what do you mean? I said, I'm going back. I'm flying out this afternoon. And they were like, well, what about, like, how? I was like, everything's done. Caravan's empty. No, I told them. They didn't work it out. And
Interesting now that you start to remember things.
yeah. No, they didn't work it out. I told them because I wasn't going to just disappear, obviously.
Yeah.
So I did tell them stupidly that little bit too early. And
Maybe
yeah,
it
so...
saved you up.
Huh?
Maybe it saved you.
But it didn't because I
But it
still went
didn't.
back. So yeah, they worked out that, because I said to them, like, I'm going back and, I've got and that's when I told them I've got a phone because they went, how you organising everything? I said, I've got a phone and, there's flights and everything's booked and I'm going.
And you would have felt like you had the upper hand.
Yeah.
Because you do.
Because I was ready.
I'm going. You're not
Yeah.
telling me what I'm doing.
That's right.
It's
So-
done and I'm gone.
Mum turned around and went, no, you're not getting a taxi to the bus. I'll drive you to the bus. I'll take you to the bus. And she went out there and said to the taxi, sorry, you're not needed. And the taxi left. And while she was doing that, my stepdad's taken her keys and hidden them. You're not taking her. She's not going on that bus.
But otherwise she would have taken you.
Well, it caused a fight and an argument to the point that she did get her keys back. And I'm sitting there going, like, I've got to go. I'll ring another taxi. Like, I'm going. It is what it is. So in the end, she ended up getting her keys back and she did drive me to the bus. And I got on that bus and I went back. And I was back in Tassie and I was only there probably a couple of days before he started coming over. And there was visits and everything just picked up where it left off. Like, I was back in the room under the house that had a window. Now, with the room that was under the house, the window that it had was literally at ground level. So, like, the window was flush with the ground. Like, you would have walked into it. And then it had, like, a windowsill that was probably, 50 centimetres deep. So you could have, like, sat on it. And that's when the wall started. So, he'd just come in. And it was, it started off with, like, a visit here or there during the day and just how you going and a hug to, late at night going, oh, I might come over, do you want a hug or do you want, to watch a movie or something? And my stepmom wasn't aware of it because we were under the house and he would come through that window. So until one day, she was trying to ring him and he wouldn't answer. And then she tried to ring me. And
I imagine at this point her stomach would have dropped like
well,
two
I
and
was
two
like,
together.
I need to answer. And he's like, no, it's your day off because it was a day off school. He's like, your day off, just sleep in, just ignore it. And I was like, I need to answer because otherwise she's going to come down here.
She's going to know.
And he's like, just ignore it. I have.
The cockiness of him.
Yeah, and he ended up turning his phone off. So she walked down the stairs and found him in the same bed as me. and absolutely lost it. I got kicked out. He got kicked out. She was like, I'm not having anything to do with this anymore. Like,
After she kind of enabled it. But,
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, in a sense, it's like,
what are you doing?
Yeah.
After I've just known there's contact being made
That's
and
right.
there's not supposed to be. Yeah.
Exactly. So, which again, still to this day, I do not hold it against her anymore. I have a good relationship with her, but
Saw her like a few weeks ago.
literally spent a day with her a couple of weeks ago. But, you know, when you look back at it, another adult who could have probably done more. I respect her view now. Like, now I've spoken to her and she says, you know, as much as she has apologised deeply. She's the only person who has apologised.
And the only person that has to forgive her is you.
Exactly. And I have.
It's not for anybody
But
else.
she has truly and deeply acknowledged and apologised. But then she also says, like, I suppose looking back, I had 2 little boys that needed looking after.
Yeah,
and
was her
that's where all my
priority.
focus went. And I am so sorry that meant you got left to the side. She goes, I'm truly...
Because you weren't her child.
That's right, which...
Isn't okay, but
That's it, but she
has
had
other priorities.
That's
yeah.
right, and that's why I say I don't hold it against her. For a while there I did. There were times, the years that we didn't talk, I fluctuated. There were times that I hated her. There were times that I loved her. There were times that I needed her. There were times that I was
And I
grateful.
always go back to a lesson that my mother taught me. By hating, you leave less room in your heart for love.
Exactly.
And that's why I say you are the only one that has to forgive
That's
her because
right.
you are the only one that will be holding on to that
That's
hate
right.
otherwise.
Exactly.
It's,
So
it's not up for discussion for anybody else about what they think.
exactly. So as I say, I have forgiven her, and we do have a good relationship now. And she did apologise, and that was enough. It was an apology I didn't even know I needed until it happened.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Wow.
When I flew, so when I flew from Tassie to WA,
The first time.
like when I was moved over there, shipped over there, as I've always called it, there's no direct flights, so you have to stop in either Melbourne or Sydney.
Okay.
And my mum rang my auntie,
Yeah.
so
My mum.
her mum, and said, I need you at the airport in Sydney at this time on this day because Natasha can't be on her own.
No, she said Natasha's flying in
Yeah.
and she needs you there.
And your mum knew the story
Yeah.
by then?
No.
No.
Okay.
My mum, her mum only found out recently when I told her.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
recently,
Okay,
like-
yeah.
Like
A year
last year, yeah.
So at this point, your mum was just saving face.
Yeah.
And my mum, yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
my mum went, well, I'm dropping off Isabella at camp tomorrow. I can't be there tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And her mum went, well, I need you there, but didn't tell her anything.
Yeah.
And my mum went, Tasha's been flying everywhere since she was 4
5,
years old.
yeah.
She was
Yeah.
5 years old because you're allowed to at that age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She doesn't need me there if she's only going to be in Sydney for an hour.
Especially not knowing why.
Correct.
That's it.
Yeah.
But the
But
reality
it's
is because of the move with the police
Child
and everything
protective
involved in child
services.
protection, I wasn't allowed to be unattended in case he turned up.
I'm surprised they didn't have someone fly
Fly with
before
me
that.
on the flight.
Again,
Yeah, but one of my stepdad's friends who lives in Sydney
Rocked up.
ended up... No, actually, no. That's not what happened. He met me in Perth. No, Melbourne. Sorry.
So
They
you ended
changed
up
my
changing to
flight. Yeah,
Melbourne.
they changed my
Yeah.
flight so that I could stop in Melbourne because, yeah, he's got a friend who lives there and he came and sat with me for the hour or two.
Yeah.
Guy that I only met a couple of times, but
And
it was
I
a safe
remember,
adult.
that's a phone call I remember my
Yeah.
mum getting from her sister, being like, I need you at Sydney Airport tomorrow
Yeah.
to meet Natasha for a couple of hours. And my mum being like, well, I'm dropping Isabella off at camp tomorrow. I
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
And then mum hanging up the phone and being like, what the fuck was that about?
Yeah.
Like, that's a phone call I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 2011, sorry, I went back in March. And while I was still in WA, I had been talking to one of my dad's work colleagues, friends, acquaintances. He used to come to the house, like, because my dad was growing pot at the farm and
Yeah.
he used to buy it off him. So I knew the guy. And we'd been talking. And when I went back in that March, we got talking more and ended up dating. And
He was 31 and she was 17.
How
He
did your
was-
dad feel about this? Because that's his place.
exactly, that's
I'm
my,
dating
yeah.
her. That's my girl.
Yeah.
My underage girl.
Yeah.
That's right. Exactly.
I feel like, and I hate saying this word,
Yeah.
this is a pedophile ring.
Yeah, literally.
Fuck yeah, you're right, Liz.
It's true.
Like,
Yeah.
he knows about it.
Yeah.
He knows the age difference. He knows that that's his mate's daughter.
Yeah.
And we're all just happy to sit here and go, love her.
Yeah,
Literally.
yeah, like a bit of that, take a bit of
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So,
He hated it.
he did. He hated it. Hated that. Actually, he hated the age gap.
Fuck,
Ironic.
Yeah.
Ironic.
Yeah, hated the age gap. But he did. He hated, and he got to the point.
Now the dad protection mode kicks in.
Yeah, all of a sudden he's a dad. Yeah, and he hated it. He hated it. And we never really discussed why he hated it, but it was always implied, and it was that. It was that I'm dipping my toes in there. No one else can. Like, you know, it was
And because he expected a relationship out of you.
That's
you're
right.
Now, he's now going to watch you
I was
love
cheating
him.
on him. Like, I was cheating on him.
He's watching you like, because you would have loved this guy, right?
Exactly.
For what it was.
Exactly.
And now he's watching you love on someone.
Yeah, and go,
knowing
hold on a
that
minute, why don't
that's
I
me.
get that? Why am
Yeah.
I not getting that relationship out of you? Exactly. So it was very, and it was almost at the point of like, you need to choose between him and I. Like.
Was it awkward for you to have him over? Like as your
Well,
boyfriend?
I didn't have him over as my boyfriend
Okay.
because at this point was where the shift was all happening. You know, I wasn't living at home anymore because, as I said, he got found at the house. She kicked us both out.
Yeah.
I went and stayed with one of their friends for a little while. I actually spent a few nights with this counsellor as well.
Yeah.
And in that time, I ended up finding a room to rent.
Yeah.
Child Protective Services got involved because I was still under 18. They put me back in foster care for a little while when they found out that I was, you know, not able to live at the house and that I had returned. And they helped me. We found a room for me to rent with some other girls. So it wasn't that I had sort of had him over as a boyfriend because it was such a short period of time. We hadn't got to the point of those kind of visits yet. Yeah. By the time we were, I was living on my own essentially. Like I'd moved out.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah. So so like I said, it was kind of, there wasn't that awkwardness. There was like the back and forth messages when my stepmom would be like, oh, who are you messaging? And I'd be like, oh, I'm messaging Ricky. And she'd be like, why? And I'd be like, actually, like, you know, and she's going, God, okay. Like, at this point, she was like, I've fucking done my hands. I'm done with you. Like, she's just...
Probably also, so long as it wasn't your dad.
Exactly. You know, it's like, well, you've moved on a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
So, not realising that at this point, it was coming from both sides because when I got involved with Ricky, my dad was still actively doing what he was doing. So, this was in the March. In June... because I had moved out, there was finally more distance. Now it had got to a point of there's more distance between Mark and I, and
Mark is
my dad.
I don't think she ever mentioned that.
No, but I figured that might be
assumed,
right.
Got to a point where, you know, Mark and I had more distance and it was easier, like, to stay. Like, we just stayed away.
Yeah.
It was just phone calls. And the restraining order was going to end that December.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay. And I remember ringing him. He kept trying to ring me. And I remember Ricky was very adamant. He was like, you need to stop this. You need to stop contacting him because not only are you fueling it and you're feeding it, you're making it worse.
Did he know what was did you disclose what was
I
happening?
didn't have to. Mark did.
Oh.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so something that hadn't actually mentioned yet is that Mark used to have Ricky and two other friends, and quite often the four of them would go and hang out at the farm and spend a few nights or a weekend out there, or they'd get up, have a piss up, or they'd get on the piss at the house or whatever. And once he started drinking, he would tell them what he was doing.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Ricky and the other boys knew what was going on.
Which is probably why Ricky felt comfortable coming at you too. Like,
That's right.
That's not right.
That's not right.
This is okay.
And I'm younger than that. I'm significantly younger than that. I'm not old enough to be your dad. Like,
And I'm the hero. I'm the hero because I'm actually taking you away from that.
And that's what he used to say to me.
Yeah.
That's what he used to say to me. And I remember for years he used to say...
And you would have felt that bit of love bombing again.
Of
like,
course I did.
He saved me.
And I never... For years...
Complex.
Yeah.
For years he used to say to me, I never intended on a relationship with you. I just wanted to get you out of there. Even though it was a relationship from the beginning.
Yeah.
But that's what he used to say to me. That was, like you say, it was that heroic view of, I was just there to help you and, you know, it happened to turn into more.
I knew about it and I done something about it.
That's right. But, so he used to talk about it. He used to brag about it. He used to be like, oh, yeah, you know, I've been doing this and I've been... Like, he was openly... happily talking about it.
Proud.
So, proud of what he was doing and what he was achieving. So, Ricky always knew. And as I said, then, you know, so he was very much like, you need to stop contacting him. Like, you're making it worse for yourselves. At the end of the day, it's in the process where it's going to start going to court. You're making it worse because it's going to get found out. Like, you need to stop. And he was really drilling me about it until one day I went, you're right, it's only 6 months.
And he sounds like a good guy saying that because he's
Of course,
telling you.
he was a great guy. What are
Yeah.
you talking about? He's a
Yeah.
great guy.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's
That's what I mean, but like,
yeah.
that's what I mean. So like, he's telling you, don't do
Yeah,
this.
he's
It's
doing
for
all
the
the right
benefit of you.
things.
And I'm under the subject that he's right.
That's
He's
right. So
that's what I would say.
It was June, and I remember messaging him and saying, right, enough's enough. I said, it's only 6 months. 6 months' time, we can talk freely again. 6 months' time, we can not worry about it. The restraining order will have been void. Like,
And then we're free.
And then we're free again. You know, I said, so for the next 6 months, enough is enough. Do not ring and message me anymore. Just give me 6 months. It's not, like, we went years without contact. Like, it's 6 months. You know, and in my head, it was going to be that simple. It was going to be 6 months and we would talk again. And I had his wife, who at this point they were separated, they were living separately, but, you know, had his wife and one of his friends, one of these three that, you know, he had a lot to do with, try and ring me that afternoon. And I was like, oh my God, like, what do you want? And they're like, and I got a hold of the friend and I was like, what is going on? And he goes, you need to ring your dad. And I was like, no, I've told him, like, we're not, like, 6 months. Like, just,
So simple.
now you guys are nagging me from you guys as well. Like, I just said 6 months. There's a restraining order for 6 months. Like, leave me alone. He's like, no, you really need to ring him. He goes, if you don't ring him, he's threatening to set the house on fire with himself in it.
Okay, this is serious.
And I was like, you're kidding me. So I ring him and I was like, what the fuck do you want?
Yeah.
Like, this is getting, like, it's, I just messaged you and now I've got everyone hassling me to ring you. Like, what do you want? Oh, I just wanted to say goodbye. I was like, for what? For 6 months? Like, you want to say goodbye for 6 months? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, all of this to say goodbye for 6 months.
Like, you're carrying on a bit.
Like, you're being a bit dramatic, you know? I was like, fuck you then. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. And I hung up. It was the last time I ever spoke to him. Because he set the house on fire with himself in it. Which is why...
Because he couldn't wait this. Like, what do you think that the...
No, he knew.
Yeah,
he knew that he was being locked up. He knew that it was... The time
When?
was
Locked
coming.
up when?
Well,
Because
the
by
next
18,
hearing-
it would have been... Oh, there was another hearing.
Well, there was another hearing. Yeah,
okay.
like, as I say, this was all unfolding. There's
Yeah.
months between hearings. So he knew that next hearing...
Eventually.
At some point,
Yeah.
that's it. And this was the final straw. I had chosen Ricky over him. I had cut him off.
Yeah, there's been a lot
and
going.
he-
Funny enough, there's been a lot for him, and he couldn't handle it.
That's right,
You
he
know?
couldn't take
I've had
anymore.
it. You've tipped me over, Tasha. You tipped me over.
That's it. You've thrown me out.
How dare you?
I know. How
Terrible.
inconsiderate of me. So yeah, basically it was everything. It was the fact that he knew that things were going to unfold, that it was out there now. He knew there was no coming back from this and he wasn't keen to go
I like how
again.
now he's scared.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
When you're almost 18, though,
Yeah.
you're scared.
Yeah.
Not 2 court cases ago.
No.
Not when you almost fell pregnant.
No.
Not when he decided to disclose it to his mates.
No.
Not when he took it to
it
the
to the
counsellor,
psychologist. Yeah. No.
Now he's running scared.
Now that it's out in
Very,
the
very
open.
twisted person.
Yeah.
Very twisted.
So
I mean, at least there was some guilt at some point.
at some stage,
If that's any
yeah.
consolation.
Yeah. So and yeah, and like I said, and then that afternoon I had spent the afternoon with Ricky because he was living with 2 other friends. One of our kids is named after him. And spent the afternoon with him and then went back because I was living at this point. So when I say I found somewhere to rent, the place that I had, it literally fell in this same week. So at this point, I was actually living at the youth centre.
Yeah.
I was living at a youth centre for a few weeks and we were waiting for the tie over for me to move into this rental, which happened literally days after he died. So this night I had to
going
go.
on.
Yeah, so this night I had to go back to the youth centre, and there was a curfew. You had to be there. I think it was like 7:30 or something. You had to be there. If you weren't there by curfew, doors were locked. You stayed somewhere else.
It's like a refuge kind
Yeah.
of thing. That's what a refuge does, yeah.
So I remember going back on time, and this same friend who had rang me earlier that day rings me and he goes, and he actually used to call me Tasha. He was like, Tasha, I need you to sit down. And I was like, what's going on? And he's like, I don't want to talk until I know you're sitting down. And he goes, he did it. He set the house on fire. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, it's gone. Like, he set the house on fire. It's gone. And I was like, well, where the fuck is he? Tarsh got himself drunk and he was in the house. And I was like, you kidding? No, he's like, I said, well, where is he? Like, is he okay? Like, I'm not assuming.
Still not
you know,
even comprehending.
Yeah,
at this
and I was
point.
like,
the
well,
house is
where
on
is he?
fire,
Like,
but he's out, right?
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, he's gone. Like, he was in the house and he's gone. And I was like, and she goes, look, he goes, look, are you?
Because my brain still would have been like, gone where?
Yeah, you know, like, and then, he goes, look, are you right to ring your stepmom to tell her? Because and I was like, yeah, that's fine. Just give me a minute. And I didn't cry. I was okay. Like, I was shell-shocked, I guess, at this point, but there was no crying or anything. And I...
Also probably not even comprehending.
No, it hadn't really
yet
clicked
properly.
yet. So I remember ringing her and being like...
Because grief usually can hit you at different times.
Yeah.
Let alone it being a bit trauma bonded as well.
That's right, of course, yeah. So I rang her and I was like, so he did it? Because obviously she was also telling me he's going to set the house on fire. So, and she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, he set the house on fire. And she's like, what do you mean? He got drunk, apparently, supposedly, I don't know. And she's like, well, where is he? I said, he was in the house, like, he's gone. And she is prone to panic attacks. So I heard the hyperventilating starting. And she's like, I need to get off the phone. I'll ring you back in a minute. And she got off the phone and she literally, like, the street that the house was... Because by this point she'd moved out. She had a rental. Like, she was separate. The house was on this street and she lived on this street, like, virtually on the corner. So she went out of her front yard and sort of looked around. She would have seen it. Like, that's how close she was. Like, living pretty much on the corner. So...
I'm surprised that she'd known that the threat was there. She wasn't like, what's happening?
That's right.
Like, don't do it, you idiot. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, something.
You are also the father of my children.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So...
and she'd enabled him this far. Why would
Exactly.
you not stop him from killing himself
Yeah,
at this
exactly.
point? Like,
so, you know, it was... I'm assuming she rang me back. I don't really remember. And one of the, like, council workers that was in the refuge house, whatever, at the time was like, you know, what's going on? And so I told him and he was like, okay, we need to get your caseworker out here. Like, you know, we need... So they rang Child Protective Services and were like, you know, so this is what's going on. Natasha needs, like, her caseworker. And they were like, look, her worker's not on tonight. We're going to have to get someone else out there. And I was like, you know, in situations like this, you'd think you'd wake them up. But okay, that's fine. Like, you know,
retell the
whatever.
story again, whatever.
But this was like 10 o'clock at night. So I had rang him... When I rang him, it was about 6:37. This is 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So within hours, he'd done what he'd done. And so somebody else came out and they're like, oh, look, we're going to take you to the hospital, get you checked out, you know, make sure you're okay, rah, rah, rah. And at this point, there was nothing. Like, there was no crying, there was no nothing. And that's what they said. Like, we were waiting for hours at the hospital to be seen because realistically, what are you there for? Like, there's nothing wrong with you.
At this point, I would have been like, are you okay?
Yeah,
Because
you
you're
know.
just shocked.
Yeah, so...
I'm surprised you remember much between then and then because it just would have been like...
See, it's funny because I actually have more memories of these few days
Yeah.
than most other things. And yeah, so, you know, went to the hospital and waited for hours and, you know, they ended up going like, what's going on? She's like, look, I'm just more worried because I just want to make sure she's okay. Like, this she hasn't cried. She's not reacting. She's not doing anything. And they're like, yeah, well, you know, shock can take its time. Like, shock can take its time. You know, just give her some space or I'm sure she'll be okay. Make sure you're not leaving her on your own, though. Take her, you know. And they're like, oh, yeah. So she goes, look, I'll take you back to the house. I said, well, it's not worth it because I'm not staying. You may as well just drop me off with Ricky. And they were like, oh, you know, are you sure? I said, you can drop me off at the house. I'm not going to walk in the door.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going. And it was walking distance. Like, it was 10, 15-minute walk, but manageable walking distance. And she's like, all right, I'll take you there. At this point, it's like 6 o'clock in the morning. So the boys are all asleep. I'm knocking on the door. Ricky's come out half asleep. What the fuck's going on? Because I had tried to ring him through the night, but he hadn't answered and obviously was asleep. And he's like, what the fuck's going on? And I was like, he fucking did it. He's like, what do you mean? And he goes, he set the house on fire. What do you mean he set the house on fire? I was like, he was threatening last night to set the house on fire. Like, oh, there was another bit I have to detour back to. And he did it. He goes, well, where is he? In the fucking morgue. And he was like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
And that's where he's gone and given me a hug, and that's where I cried.
Yeah.
However, just backtracking that night before, after I got off the phone with him, we actually went to the police station and sent out a welfare check. So I'd forgotten about that. After I got off the phone, I said to Ricky, like, I am a little bit worried. Like, you can tell he's had a few drinks and he's sounding like he's going to do something.
It's one of those things where you knew this is not normal.
Yeah. So he was like, all right, let's go. You know, we went to the police station and because there was a restraining order in place, they didn't want to take me seriously because I wasn't meant to be communicating. How did I have this information? You know, so they were like, look, we'll send a couple of the cops out there. And we were living in Devonport, but he was in Ulverston. So they sent Ulverston cops over there. And they went and spoke to him, and apparently he was sitting at the desk playing on the computer, had a few drinks in his system already, had another glass of wine there. And he'd said to them, look, I'm finishing this drink and I'm going to bed. Like, I'm fine. And they left. And they were there with him.
They did what they said
That's
they were
right.
doing. Yeah.
So they left him, and within a couple of hours, they were there putting out a fire. So, that's... as I say, so that's how that all happened.
And that's the life story. And actually, there's still more.
Yeah, so that's a lot.
Yeah.
Then we move on to the second half of your life.
Yeah. So,
guess.
as I said, at this point I was with Ricky. Like, Ricky and I were together.
So you find yourself in another abusive dynamic.
Yeah.
As a young adult.
This time I wasn't even 18. Yeah, well, that's it. They overlapped and that's my biggest thing. They overlapped each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this time psychological and financial.
And many other things, I guess. So, I mean, he was very paranoid, even at the beginning. Like, even at the beginning, he was always very paranoid. Like, I had male friends that he didn't agree with. And he was always very, like, almost controlling in that way. Like, it was... One of my closest friends was a male. One of my closest friends in high school was a male. And he didn't like me spending time with him. We also talked, after Mark died... we talked about, because I knew that we weren't going to have the farm for much longer, so we had talked about me and a few friends going and spending a night or two camping out of the farm. And he was like, oh, is that friend going to be there? And I was like, of course he is. He's like, oh, well, can I come? And I was like, well, one, we're a stack of 17-year-olds and you're over 30, so why? And two, Mark didn't want you at the farm, so I don't want you at the farm. Like, I'm there because of the loss, and I just don't want to overlap.
And this was your grieving process.
That's right. Yeah. So, and he didn't like the idea. Kicked up. We didn't end up doing it because he kicked up such a stink about it. And then, so Mark died in June. My mum actually came over. She was meant to come for the funeral, but she didn't make it because there was ash storms. And because of that, the flights were delayed. So she had to wait a few days. So she didn't make it for the funeral, but she did come. And that's when she met Ricky. And she took him outside and they had this big chat about things and everything else. And then anyway, she left and he was like, we should move to WA. And I was like, why? Like, I just left there. Like, I'd only been back 6 months. Like,
and you're still grieving.
And he's like, well, let's go to WA. Because, your mum's over there and we can start fresh. And at the end of the day, like...
So at this point now, it looks like a responsible adult. And if somebody was telling me this about my daughter...
Yeah. It would make sense.
I would have questioned the age gap first. But I would have been like, well, yeah, you can move back here with me. That's fine.
It was her idea.
Yeah.
Then I later found out that it was her who said, come on.
But because he's agreeing with her, she's like, I like him.
Yeah, I can do that. I can handle that.
She's putting her in line.
Yeah.
He's getting her to do the right things.
That's right.
This is what she needs.
Was all, move over, so so the conversation they had outside that day was, come over, we'll help you out, we'll set you guys up, we'll find you work, just get her out of here. Being in Tassie's not doing her any favours now that he's gone.
And he's using this like hook, line and sinker.
That's right.
I'm getting away from her friends.
That's right.
What she knows.
So, that's what we did.
Did he know that you didn't like WA?
Yeah, he knew that my mum and I didn't have a good relationship and that, it wasn't really where I wanted to be. But it was all kind of making sense. Being in Tassie was going to be hard, like...
That's what I mean. He was right, though.
Yeah.
It was going to be hard. Let's take her away from that. Yeah. And he'd already... got your mum to like him, so you're not friends with her at this point. You're not her best friend.
No, but
you don't like her. He does.
That's
He's taking you away from a safety net. He's already milked this.
That's right.
He already knows what he's doing.
That's right. So
and you're just like, you might be right.
So that was June. So June this conversation started. August we bought flights. September we moved to WA. So at this point, he and I had only been together for 6 months. Yeah. Like, that in itself was still early to be moving across the country. However, for me, it was safe because I had my mum over there. Even though we didn't always have the best relationship, my mum was still there.
It was your mum.
I wasn't going to a completely new state. He was. Yeah. If anything, it was a bigger risk for him. But he was also 31. Like, he's a grown-ass adult. Like, you know. So, get over there. start jobs. We started working. My mum had already organised a rental through an old family friend and semi-furnished it, so we had the basics. We had a mattress on the floor, but, we had the basics to start off with, which we then built up from. We both started working and then started having children. But as time went on,
And how old were you when you had your first child?
I was pregnant at 18. I had Ryan at 19.
Might bleep his name just for safety.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I think it's fair that we bleep
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Yeah. So yeah, I got pregnant at 18, had my first at 19. And by that point, I'd started to notice the aggression, but it wasn't, again, it wasn't that bad. Again, didn't have black eyes.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't have holes in the walls at this point. Again, it was just, he was snappy, or he was aggressive, or he was angry.
And you probably could have justified that.
Of course I did.
You might have had no sleep. I might have been carrying on a bit too much.
Exactly. At that point, it was minimal enough that it was like, there's a reason. Like, we all have bad days, or, we all get frustrated, or, it made sense. Then had a child, and, get into that newborn bubble and all the goodness and, all the serotonin kicks in and everyone's happy and everyone's having a great time and things were good, and it was like, okay, we can do this. And, then again, he'd get snappy or he'd get frustrated or whatever else, and then got to the point where every so often he would throw something, it might be a fork, when he's middle of making a coffee and he'd get, shitty about something, so he'd throw the teaspoon. But again, at this point, it just didn't feel like enough. It didn't feel bad. It just seemed...
You weren't in a DV relationship.
No, of course not. He was just cranky. Like, we all have those moments. It was nothing. So then we had another child, which I had always said I didn't want more than 3 years between children.
Did you enjoy motherhood amongst it all?
Yeah, mostly, yeah. I did. And I'd always said I didn't want more than 3 years, with my sister being 5.5 years younger than me, and then my brothers being 10 and 12 years younger than me, but only being 3 years apart. I always saw that as the best age gap. They were 2.5 years apart, and I thought, out of all of my dynamics, that is what I liked. So that was my theory. I didn't want more than 3 years between them. My eldest, we discussed, it was, stop taking the pill, let's have a baby, let's this, let's that. That newborn bubble is so strong and so intimate that I did keep going back. And as I said, I didn't plan, none of the others were discussed. We talked about the first, and it was, let's stop taking the pill and let's, try and let's see what happens.
And I think then it's always like, what's one more?
Once you get to 3, what is one more?
Yeah.
I'm at 9 now.
Yeah.
I didn't birth 9, but, we're a big
more?
family now. So, and that's right. So the second wasn't necessarily planned, but I remember going, I think I might be pregnant, and doing a test. I was actually at work, and I rang him and I was like, I'm pregnant. And their age gap is 2 years and 10 months. So, it just snuck into my 3 years.
So that worked. Yeah.
But then I had my third and wasn't planned. So there's only a 15-month gap between those two. And then when I was end of my pregnancy and early days of my third, I remember saying to him, I want one more. I want one more. I feel like one more and I'll be done. I just had that in me that I just needed one more. And he was like, no, we're not doing it. Or just no. And then he and then he got to a point of, you know what, just do whatever you want. You're going to anyway. If that's what you're going to do, there's nothing I can do to stop it. And I'm thinking, well, there is. But anyway.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting pregnant with my fourth. And when I told him, he told me to have an abortion.
And that just wasn't in your...
And no. And I was like, well, no. And he realised after the words came out of his mouth what he'd done and said. And he apologised. He was like, no, I'm sorry. I said, you can't take that back. That's how you feel about this. And that's how you're always going to... That's going to be your first thought about this child now, is that you didn't want it. You wanted to get rid of it. That's how I'm always going to see you.
That's because that was the reaction.
Your first reaction was get rid of it. Obviously I didn't. And I had my fourth child. And I was done. I thought, okay, now I felt...
And the relationship between you and him, in the way of
was
not
so
being great.
By this point it was bad. By this point, by
Did you have black eyes or anything like?
No, so he never physically hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
However, there was holes in every wall of the house.
And at that point, did you? Because you just said before, like there was no black eyes, there was no holes.
Yeah. So by this point, it was getting. So I'm just trying to think of what house we were in. By my second.
Second child?
Second child, I'm just thinking. Just trying to think. No, by my second child, he was really starting to throw things. Like mugs were getting broken and bowls were getting broken and, you know, the aggression was
Were
really...
you fearing for the kids' life? Not fearing for the kids' life, but like, these kids are going to get caught in a crossfire here.
At this point, no.
Yeah.
At this point, it was still, I want to say, civil enough
Yeah.
that the kids were never in amongst it.
Yeah.
It was more aimed, not aimed at me that he would throw things at me, but more that anger was aimed at me.
anger,
So...
yeah. But again, by the second, there was no holes in the wall.
But this was it wasn't until probably the third.
Yeah.
Because I'm just thinking by the houses, because each of the kids were actually born in a different house.
Yeah.
By the third child was when he started to hit the walls.
And so now that there's holes in the wall, are you then going, this is serious? This might be DV.
No,
or no,
again,
because
it
he
wasn't
hasn't hit
DV.
you.
That's right. Again, it
He hasn't
wasn't
hit
DV. It was
He's not holding you by the
aggressive.
throat. He's not bashing you.
That's right.
You're not fearing for your life, waking up every morning.
No, I'm not sleeping with a knife under my pillow.
Yeah, no,
like,
definitely not DV.
no, of course not. What are you talking about?
Not happening to me.
No,
Yeah.
no, denial.
I'm sure I would see it.
Yeah, of course. Exactly. I would know. I'm living it. And again, you know, manipulation and grooming. You know, we've got to keep in mind that when we got together, I was still a child. I had...
And he was a hero at this point.
Of course he
He'd taken
was.
you away from it all.
That's exactly.
He saved you. We didn't know about it yet. He wasn't wearing a cape then. We didn't know.
No, exactly. His undies were under his pants. Like,
Yeah.
No, but yeah, so it's... Yeah, as I say, it was... He did progressively get worse. You know, he was slamming doors and putting holes in things and things were getting worse, but the good was so good. Again, you know, the good was worth it. You know,
Also, at this point, from what I understand, was a really good dad.
he was a good
and you
dad.
have never seen a good dad.
Exactly, and that's just it. And I had also...
I remember my mum saying that. My parents had a
Yeah.
DV relationship. And my mum would always say, he was a shit husband, but he was a good dad.
dad.
And he was a good dad.
Yeah.
He was a good dad, but you would have never heard her say what had actually happened.
That's right.
To her.
And-
We'd seen it, but she would have never spoken about it.
And that's just it. It's one thing to say they're a good dad directly at the kids, but they're not a good dad if they're showing that in the household.
No.
And that
Because
was
I just
something
think,
that-
what would you do if your daughter came home and said, this is what's happening to me? What would your first
Exactly.
conversation be? Fuck off.
Exactly.
Get out.
It's just that what you saw
That's
of
right.
his interactions with the kids.
That's right. But
were really
directly,
nice.
that's it.
Because he wasn't harming the kids.
No,
He wasn't
directly-
putting them in harm's way. He was obviously providing for the kids.
He'd
He's
play
were
with
working.
them.
Oh, look, and he was also very domesticated as well. So, you know,
So why would anybody think that there was...
Every pregnancy she had when she was in hospital, she knew, okay, well, my kids are getting fed.
That's
and put
right.
down
You know, like
by my partner.
with my youngest, I was in hospital for 2 weeks with her because she was a preemie baby, and I not once had to be like, oh God, he's at home with the kids. What am I going to get home to? Not once, because I knew that. I mean, I was 17 when we got together. I couldn't cook a thing.
Yeah.
He taught me to cook. He was the one who used to cook roasts every Sunday and, you know, make things from scratch.
So even looking from the outside, like his hand, and you know what? I hate this about society, but society say, such a good dad.
That's
Look at
right.
him changing the nappies
Hands
and
on.
cooking. That's your job, mate.
That's
That's,
right.
your job. Nobody
That's what
pays
you're
his ass
here
for giving him dinner every
Exactly.
night. But again, that's what they would have seen.
That's exactly
He's going
right.
to work.
He-
He's helping her. She never.
He
There would have been a group of
cleaned.
women saying, there's no way I could leave my kids with my husband, their father.
Yeah.
They just don't know what's going to happen. And
Yeah,
that happens to you,
I
and they're
didn't
fine.
have that problem. I didn't have that problem. You know,
Yeah.
like he was at every birth while my mum had any older kids, and then he was at home looking after toddlers and kids.
What a great partner.
great person. You
Yeah.
know, doing all the right things.
And you wouldn't have been out there being like, well, he puts fucking holes. in the
no,
wall.
no,
Why
exactly.
would you?
No, exactly.
The
They're
good
going
was so good.
exactly. So when everyone's going, oh, you
And
know,
especially people are saying, he's so good. You're
Exactly.
like, you know what?
he is.
He's so
You're
good.
convincing me. He's
Yeah.
so good. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. So, you know, and then I was done at 4, and it was because of what was going on as well. Like, it was, by this point, things were so bad between him and I that I thought, I cannot have any more children with you. And I remember saying to him...
Was there any financial abuse?
There was, and the reason...
Because you said at one point you were working, but I can't imagine that too much of that going on your behalf.
Well, actually, I
Between
worked
kids.
more than he did.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so I worked more than he did. He spent more time as a stay-at-home dad. He did work, and I
Yeah.
will give him as much of the person that he is, the one thing I can give him a lot of credit for is that not only did he always work where and when he could, he has a really good work ethic.
Yeah.
So because of those things, we were living in a small country town. There was only so much work out there.
Yeah.
So a lot of the work he got was seasonal work.
A lot of my work had been forestry work too.
Yeah, it was a lot of seasonal work. There was a lot of farming. He did a lot of like strawberry farms and things like that as well. And then factories where he could, but a lot of it was seasonal. So in between seasons, he wasn't able to work. When the kids were at ages where they were at daycare, I was back at work if he was working. And if he wasn't, I was working full-time hours.
So it looked like you were a great team.
Of course we were.
Yeah,
we
great
made
tag
it
team.
work.
Yeah.
However, if there was no money in the account for a packet of smokes a day, there was a hole in the wall. If there was no money in the account when he decided that he was short of chuff, because he was a heavy chuff smoker, which is how we met. He was buying chuff off, he was buying weed off my dad. If there was no money for weed, it was the end of the world. If there was no gambling money, it was the end of the world. And I'll never forget sitting down one day thinking, fuck, we've gone through some money this month. Like, what is going on? And he was a gambler, and he was always adamant, oh, yeah, but I never put more than $5 on. Like, I never put more than $5 on a horse. Like, you know that. I'll never put more than $5 on a horse. Okay, but how many $5 are you putting on?
Yeah.
And I remember sitting down one day and calculating 3 months' worth of transactions into the TAB, and it coming to $6,500.
3 months.
And I went, okay. And I, having little children, had a bit of an addiction to Bonds clothing at the time. And was buying quite a bit. Like it was parcels coming every week, but not all brand new. Like I was in a lot of the second-hand groups, and we were exchanging and things like that. And he used to give me so much crap. Fucking bonds again. There's always bonds coming in. You and your fucking bonds. And I said to him one day, but I've got something to show for the money I spent.
Yeah. And it's for the kids. The kids are wearing it on the
kids
back.
have got clothes, and then I resell them. So I'm really just trading throughout as they grow.
You're just recycling at this point.
That's right. So yeah, I've spent some money, and don't get me wrong, there were definitely weeks where it was like, oh shit, we're a bit fucked because I've been a bit over.
Yeah.
And then I'd go, hold on a minute, did I go over or did you go over? Did I account thinking, and that's what I used to think then. Hold on a minute, I've accounted for our bills and our needs for the week and gone, oh cool, there's $50 there. I'll spend that $50 on bonds. But then you'd need $100 worth of smokes, pot now and gambling.
Yeah.
So now we're $100 overdrawn, but it's my fault because I spent $50 on bonds that I knew we had that week. But you went ahead and spent more.
He's not even accounted for the bills. That's because you've done it.
Because
You're
I did
just
all
saying
of it.
That's mine now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I
but
work. That's
he
mine.
doesn't see it as financial abuse because
had money.
And we both had access to both accounts.
But you also had money to buy your stuff.
That's right.
You weren't left with nothing.
No, that's right. So, but we both had access to both accounts. We both just used whatever. But like, even though we had accounts in our own names, we'd just pick up whatever card needed. Wherever the money, or we'd transfer the money between us. So it was never my money and your money. We just had money in two separate accounts. I would pay for everything, and then whatever was left, we would just do what we needed. But the issue was that when there wasn't the money that he wanted after I had paid the bills, I was the problem because I didn't leave enough for smokes, pot,
You weren't sacrificing
gambling.
the bill to leave enough money.
No. Yeah. It's like when we were in the process of separating in those final weeks, and he was still technically living at home, so he did what he'd always do, and he transferred his pay so that I could do the groceries that week. Spent $600 or something on groceries, and then within 24 hours.
So you guys had good groceries.
Yeah,
you had
yeah,
food.
yeah.
Nobody was going without.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. So nobody was going without.
No.
Nobody was going without.
Did a grocery shop, and within that 24 hours was when I really started to put my foot down on, okay, this is done, like this is over, we can't do this anymore. And he wanted his money back. I was like, it's in the pantry. Like, there's nothing I can do, but absolutely lost it. He actually took my cricket and was threatening to take the embroidery machine because he was going to hock him to get his money back. And I'm like, the reason the cricket's in the car is because it's faulty. I'm getting it replaced, so good luck getting anything for it. But that day was just horrific. That was my breaking point.
I was going to say, that was your turning point to be like, hey, enough is enough.
He actually hit the windscreen that day while I was driving, and I thought he broke the rear view mirror. Turns out they pop off. I didn't know this at the time.
I didn't know that either.
No, they just this particular one was like those ball bearing things, so it just popped off. Oh. And I thought he broke it, so I hoiked it home thinking I can't drive around without a rear view, without a rear view mirror. Hoiked it home, had a better look, and went, oh shit, okay. But still, that's not the point.
Yeah.
Like,
To think it would have gone that far.
Yeah, oh yeah, he actually broke my front windscreen once within the same time, within all of this. But yeah, and there's always a turning point for these things. There's always that point of, okay, I can't do this anymore. Like, now is the time. And everyone around you can tell you, leave.
You need to do
You
it
need
yourself.
to hit that point of, this has now gone too far. And that was,
I think as a friend, all you can do is support somebody.
Of course, yeah. And all of these things happened in that time of, that's enough's enough. So
And your youngest was 3
no, she was not.
when you moved here.
My youngest was not 3. She's 4 now. I've been here nearly 3
2
years.
years?
She was 8 months old when we separated.
Okay, so how old was she when you moved here?
18 months.
I thought it was much
No.
later, sorry.
No. We formally separated, technically, like, a couple of months. Well, within the few weeks of Lilo passing.
Our grandfather.
Yeah. That was when we...
Yeah, because you didn't come to the funeral. Well, you couldn't have anyway because it was COVID, but...
Yeah. He wouldn't pick the kids up from school the day of the funeral so that I could stay and watch the funeral. Anyway, but yeah, so we... But yeah, she was only about 8 months old when we formally, and enough was enough when we separated. And then she was 18 months old when we moved over here. So...
Let's talk about back to back, right?
Yeah,
No
that's just
time.
it. I mean, not even, like I say, it was just they overlapped each other.
Yeah.
They overlapped, and there was no breathing space to stop and think. And because of that, I didn't get to mourn Mark, but I also didn't get to process what had happened.
I was going to say that would have been the hard part because there was no because if you had time to process, maybe that wouldn't have gone as far as it did.
That's
because you
right.
would have seen it for what it was.
That's right. But I wasn't
That being
allowed to.
said, she got 5 great kids.
Oh yeah, look,
Yeah.
I don't regret them at all. And I don't. The only regret I have is what they've seen. Like,
Yeah.
I do regret, especially the older ones that remember. But yeah, no, and it overlapped was the biggest issue. I mean, it was years after Mark died that I woke up and went, oh my God, he was awake the whole time.
What a bizarre thing, hey?
And I remember that day. I remember that day and that moment and falling to the ground like a sack of shit, like in tears. And Ricky pretty much standing over me going, oh, come on, don't make out like you didn't know. Like, surely you've known all this time that it was a facade. Like, and I'm like, I wasn't able to.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. Like...
Wow. So how did it feel starting over with your kids?
It was very refreshing. It was a different way of breathing. Like, it was a different... It was quiet to begin with. It was like kids are loud, but it wasn't the same kind of loud.
Yeah.
It was
It
very...
would have been here, right?
Yeah.
We talked about that before. Here.
Yeah.
It's all the tide. It's
Just
the
that-
loudness is here.
That's right. And it was peaceful. Like, it was, we did so much more. Like, it was, you'd pick them up from the park, pick them up from school and go, fuck it, let's go to the beach.
And if you didn't want to cook dinner that night and just have cereal, you could.
No one cared.
Yeah.
That's it. There was no one to judge or say anything, or there was no tiptoeing and walking on eggshells. Like, it was just, we just did what we wanted.
Yeah.
Like, the time that we spent in WA separated was still a little bit edgy because sometimes he would just turn up. But I was able to go pick him up from school and just not come home. It didn't matter. Like, I had no one to answer to and it didn't matter. And
It sounds like you grasped that empowerment quite quickly and quite well.
yeah.
I say
for
quite
sure.
well because you went, this is fucking mine now.
Yeah.
I'm just going to run
And
with
I
it.
also, I didn't drive. I didn't get my license until later. Like, I got my license literally at the separation. Like, if anything, the license was like the final key. Like, I
now
finally
you can get
passed
out.
my learners, and it was that same day that I walked in with my P plates and went, goodbye. Like, I don't, and that
The
really
universe
was,
lined up well for that, didn't
that,
it?
yeah, it did. It was
Yeah.
literally that same day of this is it. And it was, I mean, it had been leading up. The couple of weeks prior, it was, there was pushing towards it. And so being able to drive meant that, that's right, I went and picked the kids up and we went, let's go to the beach. Or let's go to the park. Or let's go and get a Macca's ice cream. Or, like, we were out most afternoons purely because we could.
Yeah.
Not because we needed to, not because there was just we could.
You now had a new lease on life.
You know, I could throw the dogs in the car and pick the kids up and disappear and get fish and chips on the way home and have dinner in the car. And that was it. Like, you know, it was definitely a different level of freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it...
Until you needed to find a new place to live. Yeah,
so then we had... So we, like I say, officially were all truly well and done about September. And then it got to March. Why is everything happening in March? I've just realised, like, every event...
Like March or October.
Yeah, I know, they seem to be the big months, don't they? But yeah, it was about March that I had a rent inspection, and I said, look, I've just got this gut feeling, what's going on? Are they going to re-sign this year? Like, I just had that feeling of something's going to change here. And it was the rental market had changed. That's when, you know,
COVID
the crisis, the crises had really started to kick in. I was paying very little for what I had, and I knew that they could have been asking for more. They obviously realised at this point that I was by myself with 5 kids and 2 dogs, and there was only one income. And I just thought, they're not going to re-sign this lease.
And I know that when you have large families, one of my sister-in-laws, her and my brother-in-law have quite a large family.
Yeah.
And they found it hard to the point where actually they had to go through Department, because they were very blended, his, hers and theirs.
Yeah.
They actually had to go through Department of Housing.
Yeah.
Because it was based on the exemption of the large family.
Yeah.
Because rentals just would say,
no,
you got too many kids, you got to wreck the joint. Like that was their argument.
Of course, 100%, and I respect that.
Yeah.
And I went, oh shit. And I had until, I believe it was November that my lease ended. But I said to her at that inspection in March, like, I need to know, because there is too many of us for me to be given 6 weeks notice. Like, I've got 5 kids, 2 dogs, and on a single income. Can't be done. Like, as soon as you know, I need to know. All right, I'll have a chat with the owners and see what the plan is. She rang me a few days later. And I remember speaking to my grandma, my auntie, Isabella's mum, and saying, look, this is what's going on. Like, and it wasn't asking for help. It was just, we were catching up.
Yeah.
You know. Call every few weeks,
That's right.
Days,
we used to talk all the time. At one stage, I was talking to Lila every day. Like, it was just what we did. So, and I said to him, like, I've got this gut feeling, A few days later, she rings, and my grandma said to me, well, worst case, why don't you come over here? And at this point, I'm like, it's not going to come to that. Like, come on. She's like, well, worst case, why don't you come over here? We'll work something out. And I was like, don't worry about it. Anyway, a few days later, I get a phone call from the real estate. Look, they've decided they're not going to re-sign this lease in November. And I went, fuck, okay, thanks for letting me know. So I rang my grandma and my auntie back, and I'm like, they're not going to re-sign. And they're like, well, what do you want us to do? Like, what do you want to do? I was like, I'm still processing. Like, I don't know. I said, finding a rental in a small town with 5 kids and 2 dogs as a single person is just, I honestly don't know. And my auntie said, look, these are your options. Either we find a way to help you over there, and whether it means that I co-sign something or something, like we find a way, even if it's a little bit out of budget, and we help out where we can, like, or we help you move over here. Yeah. Grandma's at the stage she can't really be living on her own for too much longer now.
She had a big house.
She had a house that was just way too big. She's
like massive house, and she was the only one living in it.
Yeah, I mean, it was 4.5 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, like 2 levels.
It's a lot for an older person to be
For
looking
an 85-year-old.
To be looking after.
So, she was like, look, eventually she wants to sell the house anyway. She goes, if you want, we'll help you come over here. You can get over here and utilise the house for a year or 2, and then while you get on your feet, and then we'll sell. So, and I went, oh shit, And it did. Like, I mean, there was a lot to think about. And I still say to this day, one of the biggest decisions in leaving was the primary school, or the school that we had.
Yeah.
We were at a private school, but it was such a good school. The kids still talk about it now. And it was honestly one of the things that made me go, do I really want to do this? But everything else, it was like, fuck it. Like...
And most people would have went, well, that's a no-brainer, because we need to move over ahead.
That's right. One, I mean, I truly got away from Ricky, so I believed. He ended up following, but truly got away to really show him, though, that this is done. Like, there's no coming back.
There's a bit more independence for you now, because you've
right.
got more than a safety net of just your mum. You've got, like, your auntie, your grandmother.
Exactly. It was also... Not only did I want to spend some more time with my grandma, I mean, I'd lost my granddad and not so much regretted, but realised how much time I'd lost.
Yeah.
And that I couldn't spend with him. And I didn't want to have that with her as well. I also wanted the kids to have that relationship with her that they hadn't had a chance to previously, or with him. Like, my younger ones didn't even meet him. So it was kind of, that sense was enough. It was like, they have a good relationship with my mum. They're not going to lose that. They'll still get video calls. They'll still visit. They'll still have that. But they haven't got that bond and that relationship with my grandma or my auntie.
Yeah.
So it kind of just happened. And initially, we had planned on me moving over in November. The plan was thinking, all right, we'll do it in November when the lease ends. But then it kind of went, well, the real estate have said that the owners aren't going to charge me if I leave early, because
So there's no break.
they wanted to. That's right. They wanted to fix up the house and do so, because obviously they wanted to up the rent on it. So they wanted to repaint it and all this stuff. So for them, they didn't care how soon they could get in. There was going to be no break lease fee. There was going to be no anything. So it was kind of like, well, why keep paying rent?
Yeah, just pack up and go.
Just go. So we ended up here in July.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sold pretty much 80% of what we had, and got a shipping container with the basics, and 5 kids, 2 dogs, and me. Jumped on a plane. Well, actually, my mum did help come on the plane, but yeah, came over here, and yeah, we're here in July.
Best thing you've ever done?
Yeah.
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 Because then we got Bryce.
Then we got Bryce. Yeah, we did get Bryce. Arrows.
So how is your understanding of motherhood? How has it been shaped by your experiences?
Both. It goes both ways. There are definitely things that I go, I need to do that differently, and I don't want my children exposed to that, and I want them aware of things, and, you know, I'm more onto it. But there are definitely there are definitely negative impacts where, because of things I've experienced and because of the way that I have become, because of the traumas and the PTSD and everything, I can be less patient on things, and I can be more frustrated, and I can be more aggravated, and that not only comes from just me, but from them as well, because the older ones especially, spent years being molded. You know, those early sponge brain years.
Yeah, that's
was spent in such a negative environment that they're not bad people, they're not angry people, but they've seen enough that there are behaviors that come out of them that I'm like, I don't know where that came from. You know, and we do butt heads. So it goes both ways, you know, and both sides, the children and myself, are, you know, doing what we need to do, and we are working on things, and we are aware of it, and we communicate where we need to, and, you know, obviously they're not aware of it.
And that takes a lot, right?
Exactly.
That takes a lot, because that comes with a lot of healing.
That's right. I mean, the kids themselves obviously aren't aware that they're healing or aware that they need to change.
And sometimes they're healing you without even knowing.
That's right. You know, it's, you know, it is day by day. Every day is a new day. Some days are better than others. But it does mean that some days are really hard.
Yeah, because sometimes you don't even have time on your side while you're healing with kids.
Of course not.
Because mothering must go on.
That's right.
And as you know, when you come over as a single mother, the show must go on. You don't have time to be sick. You don't have time to think about healing.
No.
You got to wait for the kids to go to bed and think about your day, and you're exhausted.
Exactly.
You don't
By
want
that
to think.
point, I'm like, I can't.
You just want to doom scroll or watch nothing. Yeah.
I'll be better tomorrow. I'll fix myself tomorrow.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So it's messy. It's messy, but we get through it, and we're all getting better each day. And as I say, some days are worse than others, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
And it does mean that, as I said, I am more aware of things. My children have been made more aware of things.
I think it's just what me and Izzy were talking about the other day via text. Just the older we get and things through life, we realise where our behaviours are, what has made us toxic, what can we improve on as an individual, as a friend, as a mother. And I still get triggered by my little one, because as I spoke to you before, some of the things that come out of her mouth, I think I know that look, because that's my mother's look. I have to be like, that's okay, you can say that, but I still have to rein me and her in.
That's right.
Because some things aren't okay.
That's right.
I'm learning to be a parent as much as you are and as much as I, because I've never raised an 11-year-old girl. I've never raised a 20-year-old boy.
And the reality is, even in families like mine, I might have 3 boys and 2 girls.
But they're all very different.
But that's right. Just because I'm
different
raising...
times, different environments, different...
My 4-year-old girl
they
now...
each got a different version of you.
No. Yes.
Yeah.
My 4-year-old girl now is not the 4-year-old girl I raised 4 years ago.
No.
Because they're both different girls. So the 8-year-old girl I'm raising now is not going to be the same 8-year-old girl I have in 4 years'
and
time.
times.
So
we change with time.
that's right. So, yeah, it's your first time every time. Every child is your
I think
first
we
time.
forget that until we're here.
Yeah.
Like, I wish I had said to my mum, she didn't have it all together.
Yeah.
But again, she only knew what she knew. I wish I had realised that this was your first time parenting.
Yeah.
And she had 3 girls and a boy.
Yeah.
But each of us were different.
That's
very
right.
different. So it wasn't the same parenting.
No.
We also even didn't get the same version of her.
No.
But I wish I had said to her then, I know that you did your absolute best with what you had.
Yeah.
Because I know she did.
That's right.
Because that's why we're like we are. So
That's
I think a
right.
big part of that was her.
Yeah.
As much as there's some things I don't do.
Yeah. But even then, the things
I know
that, you
that it
don't
was
do
hard
because
because I know now.
That's right. And the things
And
that
I didn't
you
even
don't
have
do,
half those struggles.
Exactly. The thing is that, the things that you don't do are because you experience the other side of it and you still learn from it. So that's what I mean. It's there are things that I do. I say my children are more aware than probably most children their age of, things like sexual assault and things like inappropriate.
And I don't think that's a bad thing now.
No. I mean, it was only today that my auntie said to one of my boys, because she had one at soccer, and they had like this whole fair set up, like there was bumper cars and all these things set up at the soccer fields for some ungod knows reason. And she said to him, "Oh, after soccer we'll go on the bumper cars, but don't tell your siblings because they'll crack it. It's a secret." And I went, "No, it's not.
We don't keep secrets.
It's like, we don't keep secrets. You can not tell someone in the sense of just don't bring it up, and it's not lying if you just don't say anything, but it's not a secret."
Yeah.
Because we don't need to. And she was just like, she kind of like rolled her eyes, and I'm like, the wording is what matters.
Yeah.
The
Because
wording
it mattered
is
for
what
you.
matters. That's
It
right.
mattered
That's
for
fine. I'll
you.
bring it up with her and I'll tell her.
Oh, it's fine. I
What I
know. As soon as she hears that she's done something, she's like, "It's fine, I'll deal with
No,
it."
because again, she's never. But again, it's one of those things. But she's never had to not
That's
keep a
right.
secret.
That's right.
So it's never happened
Because
to
the
her.
secret to her is, oh, you got an ice cream.
Exactly.
Not something inappropriate is
Yeah,
happening.
Exactly.
yeah.
And that's why
And I
just
think
say,
now as adults, and I've spoken to a few of the adults on my daughter's football team.
Yeah.
And they're like, so in the sense of becoming more aware.
Yeah.
Even they are like, we don't let our kids sleep out. And
We don't either.
my generation, like our generation, we don't do that.
No.
I don't do that. And knock on wood, nothing's happened to my
Yeah.
kids and they haven't mentioned anything. And nothing's happened to me.
Yeah.
But I am very aware that most of this happens in family. And they said, it's not that the outside people, it happens in family with the people that we trust.
That's right.
So that's one family that I know. But I know that I've also spoken to a few more that have said exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So this has either happened to you or it hasn't, but we've also become more
Wary.
as a
Exactly.
society that this is happening to not our friends at the barbecue, but
Yeah.
our aunties and uncles who are coming to our house and having a drink.
Exactly. Well, see, my
And in your
kids-
case, your father.
That's right. Exactly. So my kids know, like my eldest will even like say it to the younger ones now. Not only do we are more than happy for friends to come and have a sleepover. They want to come sleep over, that's their parents' decision, that's fine.
You're like me. I prefer it all
We
to happen at my
don't-
house.
That's right. We don't do sleepovers.
Yeah.
My eldest has had a sleepover at one particular friend back in WA. He lived over the back fence. And not only was his dad a cop, but his mum and I had been very involved with each other. And because of that, I was comfortable enough. He was over the back fence. Other than that, they've stayed with my parents and they've stayed with Isabella's mum, my auntie. They don't stay anywhere, and they never have, they never will, and that will never change.
And that's fine. My kids don't even like sleepovers, so I'm
Yeah.
happy to have 15 kids at my house
Same.
because I know what's
That's
happening.
it. We just had a 12-year-old birthday party. He only had 6 or 7 friends this year. Last year, I think it was 10. You want to sleep over and stay up all night playing Xbox? I don't care. At least I know you're at home, and at least I know nothing's going wrong. And it's not just sexually.
No, that's
It's
right.
not just
Again, because
that.
this is where you thought it's not rape.
Yeah.
You know.
But it could be anything. It
No.
could be anything. It could be something. And it's not even just intentional. Accidents happen as well. Like, you hear of all these kids that are on a friend's dirt bike and they rolled it because they didn't know what they were doing and they killed themselves. Like, it's just, now he's at an age where he wants to ride around the streets with his friends, and he ended up with a phone so that he could do that. And we're not coddling them. Like, they're still getting that
Put it this
freedom.
way, I was secretly glad when we got my son a ute. My husband said, we got him a ute.
Yeah.
2-seater ute. I was secretly glad because I thought, you've only got you and your mate. Not that my son's ever got hooning or anything.
No, but you're not going to have
have
5
the
distractions.
influence of other people in that car
Yeah.
to drive around.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah.
So, you're living now in Sydney.
Yep.
The blended family, 9 kids on a weekend.
Yep.
His, hers, yours. Yours, his, yours. Yours, his, ours.
There's no ours.
Okay, yeah.
They don't share.
Right.
No, we don't share.
Yeah,
No. It's chaos.
Yeah.
It's probably more than just weekends. Like, I mean, that's the average. But we do school holidays, we do Halloween, we do birthdays, we have them a lot extra through the year as well. But it's chaos.
Yeah. Well, with that, how do you create safety and love in your home now after everything you've been through? And I know we just sort of just touched on that a second ago.
I think it's more, and for both, we don't normally separate them, but separating the groups of kids, as I said, my kids have grown up in a household, even when their dad was around.
It's probably just a conscious decision now.
Yeah.
Let's just avoid anybody getting the blame for anything.
Yeah, but yeah, as I said, separating the groups, my kids have been raised in a household, in both, with and without their dad around, where knowledge was always power. They've always known, like, even when it comes to women and changes and hormone, like, they've always been aware. We don't have to have open conversations and sit them down one day and be like, you're going to get your period. Like, they've grown up in a world where everything has been normalized and everything has been discussed, so that if and when the time comes that they have those questions, they don't feel weird and strange.
Yeah.
And if, God forbid, they were ever in a position where something could go wrong, they know that they can come and talk about it. They know what is and isn't appropriate and what should feel uncomfortable in a situation. So that's,
and especially now in these days when kids have access to so much social media, and things go online.
Yeah.
Like, at least if they were with a group of friends somewhere and somebody was sending a nude.
Yeah.
And then say your daughter was there, and
knowing,
they're like, "Hey, I don't feel okay with that. I'm going to call mum."
That's right.
So this
Or
doesn't
I'm gonna
feel
tell,
right.
Yeah.
And she knows that she doesn't have to go with the majority.
That's right. So we've always been open about that. So there's that side of it with my 5 kids. But then the other side of it, I have made it a mission to be the step parent I needed for the other kids. That. So I will drop everything. And I've got examples of only recently, one of the girls recently broke her arm. And there was no stopping, no thinking, no nothing. It was me who threw her in the car and took her to the hospital and was with her every step of the way, because neither of her parents were. Not because they didn't want to be or they couldn't be. Her dad was obviously with the other 8 children at our house. Her mum was at home, and I obviously rang her, and she did what she needed to do to sort the other kids. And,
And I love this because this is the village we talk about.
That's exactly
this
right.
Is people
We
that go,
were all doing...
It's not me bragging. It's me doing what any mum should be doing and helping this bloody child.
Exactly.
Let me call your mother.
That's right.
To get here when she can.
That's
I'm
right.
here though.
As soon as, she actually said to me in the car, in between her howling in pain, are you going to ring mummy? And I said, look, right now I'm driving and it's not the safest option. When we get to the hospital, my first priority is to make sure that you are triaged. However, the minute there is 2 seconds where I am not needed for you, your mum's going to be the first person I ring. And that was what was needed. Like, I wasn't going to delay her care to contact her mum.
Of course.
But I was also going to take the first opportunity to contact her mum to make her aware.
And her mum would have been appreciative of that.
Exactly. And she was. And we talked about, she did question why I went and not their dad. And we talked about it and she respected it and it was fine.
In the moment of things... But I'm just getting her in the car and going.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And I'm also a much more calmer person in a crisis than what he is. He freaks and stresses.
And can I tell you, as a kid with a stepmom, who had come to my wedding, my stepmom, not my dad, my stepmom.
Yeah.
My stepmom actually took my mum away from the night when she was passing. She sat with us at palliative care with my mum. My dad was no longer with her at this point, but we still say she's our stepmom.
Yeah.
And the kids call her nanny to this day.
Yeah.
As a child of a stepmom and a mother, what you've just said there and what you've done, they will absolutely love the shit out of that. Exactly. Because this can go really bad really quick. Right?
Exactly. And that's why I say, like, as much as I have a good
relationship. So when you have that good relationship, there's no secrets.
No.
There's no what will mum say, what will Tarsh say. It's just pure love.
That's right. They know that they've got the 3 of us. And... as I said, I have a good relationship with my stepmum now.
And what a good model.
Yeah. But the fact is that growing up when she was when I did need her, she wasn't there. And because of that, it has taught me that to be that person, to be the person that they need in that moment and to be the person that I needed in that moment. So the kids do all get treated equally. The kids do all get treated the same, and there's no questioning. Like I said, in that moment, it wasn't, oh, she's your kid, you take her. Yeah. Like, she needed me there and I was there. Yeah. And that's definitely one of the biggest lessons I probably got through all of this. I mean, aside from obviously all the
Yeah, of
obvious,
course, of
but I
course.
mean, like, one of the big things that I'm truly grateful for is seeing the things that my stepmom did do right, and the things that she, where she was there for me, and the person that she was for me, but also being able to do what she couldn't.
Yeah.
And not just see my
And this is what we
children
talk
as the
about, right? You
priority.
either take from something or you go, I don't want to
That's
do it
right.
like that.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, and with time, as I say, those four didn't necessarily grow up in a household where all these other things were common knowledge, but they're starting to get that way because it's common knowledge in our house.
Yeah.
So they will
I think it should be common knowledge in
every house.
There should be some sort of talk
Yeah,
about it in case they're ever in a group where this happens.
that's right. But I think
You
that,
also don't want to scare the living shit out of your kids.
but that's
No,
what
that's what I'm saying.
and
Like
that's-
appropriate talk.
But that's why I say that's where
We're not
I
going to
say
go to a 9-year-old. Now, be careful when you say about it. You will get raped.
Yeah, no.
Like, yeah.
But I think the biggest one is not so much a talk, but just making it part of everyday life. And that's the difference, because that's where I struggle now. Like, Bryce now sometimes says to me, like, the girls don't necessarily know what's going to happen, and they're getting to those ages where these things are going to happen. And I'm like, I know, and, they need to know. And at this point, their mum hasn't had that conversation, but even though
And that's hard to navigate.
it is, because my girls know that information, but I don't know how to have that conversation because I never had the conversation with my girls. For them, it was just like, if they walk in on me changing a pad, they just know what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, it's normalizing it in a way, and then extending it to, yes, the other things that could happen, but age appropriately, and again, not a sit at the table with a bowl of lollies to keep you happy
And make
while
it
I'm
awkward.
Don't make it awkward. Just have those conversations, like, in your day to day. Oh, like when when this happened, and how you didn't really like that idea. Like sometimes.
So that's another thing. What do you think society still doesn't get about survivors of childhood sexual abuse, grooming, or domestic violence? Because we shouldn't be waiting till we have to have that serious
That's
talk
right.
at the table.
I think that's the biggest one. I think it needs to be normalised, not in the way of, like I said, normalising rape. I'm not saying normalise rape. I'm saying normalise comfortable conversations. Normalise.
Because, like I said, this isn't just about grooming and all that. This is
No.
about this. We are online. We are a society where our
That's right.
5-year-old kids are playing Roblox
Yep.
online. The
Talking
grooming
to
gets
God
done
knows
there.
who. Yeah. So it's
That's
about
where the grooming starts sometimes now.
It's about normalizing trusting your gut even as a child. Like, this person doesn't talk like my friends, or this person doesn't make me feel comfortable, or normalizing expressing those feelings, expressing that, hey, mum, I don't know what, like, this friend of mine is talking weird, or this friend of mine is asking what school I go to. Like, normalizing those conversations and normalizing understanding that if something doesn't feel comfortable, speak about it. But also, as I said, making the conversations where children, not just girls, but children are aware of changes within their bodies and changes within the people, because that's when all of these things come into play. That's when these family members come out of the woodworks and start getting too close for comfort. And again, normalizing that. It was something that was actually at the school that we went to in WA. I remember going to one of their parent-teacher night situations and them having a big chat about what curriculum they were going to go through for this and that. And they were talking about private parts and how the context has been changed now.
Now you've got to actually call them for what they are.
No.
Oh.
It's that we don't just worry about our private parts. Our entire body is private. Once upon a time, your private parts was what was covered by your swimwear. But now it has been changed that we don't have a private part. We have a body. Our whole body is our own.
Yeah.
And
Because if somebody's sitting too
normalising that-
close with their arm around you, like a family member, a friend, whoever,
You don't have to
you
be
don't have
comfortable
to
with
feel
that.
comfortable. No.
And
then
if
that
somebody's
also
kissing
takes away
you-
that also just takes away from physical assault, because
Exactly.
it doesn't have to be sexual, but if you got punched
That's
in the
why I
arm
said
by
before.
a parent,
Exactly.
But
That's why
remember,
said before,
I-
it's
By
not just
an
sexual.
uncle.
Yeah, remember
Yeah.
I also told you my daughter doesn't like being hugged or touched.
And
And in
that's
our
fine.
family, we've always known.
Yeah.
Well, not we've always known, we've always done it. And I do it with my kids.
Yeah.
Not force it, but, give everybody a kiss hello.
Yeah.
Either say hello or give them a kiss hello.
Yeah.
And my daughter was just like, hi, and never really kisses
Yeah.
them. My son still does.
Yeah.
And some people have said, oh, that's a little bit... She's a little bit, she didn't even give me a kiss hello.
Yeah.
And she's like,
She
I just
doesn't
don't want
want
to.
to snob.
She doesn't want to.
Yeah,
And she doesn't have to. Because
That's
if she
right.
doesn't feel comfortable about it, I'm not about to force her, because then that's just
That's
just
that's
saying
taking
you
away.
must, yes.
Yeah, that's taking away her right
Because
to
what
say no. And
because
if you
what
take
if
that
she,
away,
what if not, God forbid something happens, she's going to say,
well, I'm not allowed to say no.
I'm not allowed to say no.
That's
Mum's
right.
also told me that I must do it.
that's right. Mum said,
So
I must
never
give
want
you a
that,
kiss.
yeah. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But don't be a cunt.
Yeah.
To be like, hey,
Exactly.
bye,
You
that's
can
fine.
still be polite
Yeah.
without being physical.
Correct.
That's right. And that's why I say it's normalising that.
Because we've done it for our whole life. We've done
Exactly.
it. Give them a kiss, hello, give them a hug,
We
goodbye.
have grown up in a family, in a society where it's all about
culture.
culture.
That's what I mean, in a lot of cultures,
physical contact.
In a lot of cultures, it is a kiss, hello, a
That's
hug,
right.
goodbye.
And that's like...
And that's shown as a sign of manners when your kids do that growing
Yeah,
up for me.
that's
Give them a
right.
hug, goodbye. It's
That's
such
right.
naughty kids if they don't.
That's right.
Cheeky kids.
That's right.
And
It's
so your
rude.
parents
It's-
didn't want to not have cheeky kids.
Yeah, they forced
So
them
you
to...
forced them to do it.
Exactly.
So I think, as a society, we've become more grown that would probably be the start of something
That's
for some
right.
I
families.
do personally, and this is as someone who has not been a victim of assault in any way, but I do feel personally like I don't remember ever feeling uncomfortable
No,
having to
and
give someone a kiss, hello, and that could be because it's our culture.
I think it's
so
two
maybe
things
for me
though.
it was like, well, this is all I've ever known.
But I think it's two things. One, yes, it's the culture that we were raised in, that it's all you've ever known, because from a baby they would come and give you a kiss. But two, you didn't have somebody around to make you feel uncomfortable. You didn't have there wasn't that family member or that friend or whatever who you gave them a kiss and they touched your ass. Like you weren't made to, it was always just a mutual, hi, how are you? There was nothing ever. So I feel like even though it was normalised.
I do feel like also as an adult now, I do have some instinct of I'm like, I don't want to give you a kiss, hello.
But that's what I'm saying.
I think sometimes it's just instinctual for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I do wonder if I wasn't brought up in this culture,
would you have that instinct?
would I feel that more often? Because it's like, it's not normal for me to kiss people hello.
Well, no, you would feel it more often.
See, I feel it as more with family.
Yeah.
And I think Jermaine does too. Like my son, he feels it more with family. So we're like, hi, how you going? And kiss. And again, I've never felt uncomfortable with anyone. But my daughter just doesn't like being hugged. So even,
you know what I mean?
she's lovable in every other way. But even for me, but even for me, she'll say, Mum, can I have a hug?
Yeah.
And then she'll hug me and then she says, okay, don't hug me.
Yeah. And that's
like
it.
she's just not on a touchy
and that's okay.
person.
And that's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
But then there are people who are the
I
opposite.
know what you're saying. If you had the awkward uncle that touched your bum, you'd be like, not going. But you'd also be more aware of every other male that you go to be like,
yeah, exactly.
push your bum in so you don't get touched, or kiss him on his other cheek so you're far away from him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's it.
You would notice the difference between the uncomfortableness of like, oh, I
Yeah.
feel like it. Or even if you never said it and they just brushed up, and sometimes purely by accident.
Yeah.
Ew.
That's right.
We always have that, like somebody's always go that, that's a creep.
Yeah.
And it might not necessarily mean it, but it's just that
In
didn't
that
feel
moment.
okay.
Exactly.
And then you start to evaluate what was in that. Everything else is going to be like that. Oh, now he always wants to talk to us, and it could literally be innocent. Like this guy has no idea, but this is how you evaluate
that's it. Your
things
brain
now.
will start to overthink it and change the way they view that
If you've
person.
ever had that experience that that's not right, that you've experienced it.
That's right.
Because it's not right for you.
Interpreted the way.
Yeah, and that's not wrong. It just
No.
didn't feel right for you. That's
Exactly.
fine.
Exactly. They're probably a great person, to everyone else.
Yeah, and they don't know that they've been named pedo.
Of the family, of the barbecue.
Creepy uncle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I know the poor guy.
I'm aware of it, yeah. So we get back to wrap it up.
Yeah.
So what kind of support or change do you wish existed for kids and women in situations like the ones that you've lived through?
That's a good question. I guess it's more...
I mean, have an answer for this.
I want to say, more open and available supports, but it's like I said before, unless you're ready, and when you're ready, there is options out there, but you've got to be ready. I think that's the hardest thing, and there being something to make you ready isn't a thing. Like, there's nothing to make you ready. There's nothing to
Do you mind if I say something?
Yeah, no, go for it.
Just from what you've told me, I think with the amount of people that have failed you, they should be taking something serious. It could very well be nothing.
Yeah.
But let's just have a look at it, because I'd kick myself if something come of this and I didn't look at it.
Yeah. I mean, there's...
But in
there is
saying that, you're right in saying before, You can't be asking every kid that's
Exactly.
not doing well in school, have you been touched? Have you been touched?
Yeah, exactly. And that's fear-mongering. So
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is you need to be ready. And I was so careful about how I worded things so that people didn't pick up.
You were.
So careful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you've got to be ready. And I mean, maybe something like, you know, an anonymous option. But again, it's things like Lifeline are there. Like, if you're not ready, you're not ready.
No, you're not
And
going to pick up the phone and talk to them.
That's right.
What were you going to say, Izzy?
I was going to say just to not be treated like a statistic. Because you had Child Protective Services rock up.
Yeah.
They never came back.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we've done our job. That's just another number.
But she also didn't, I feel like you didn't feel like you were a statistic. She'd done what she wanted
that
to do.
circumstance in particular
Yeah.
makes her look like a statistic.
Yeah.
Just a number,
Yeah, yeah.
just another person.
Just another one.
yeah.
We've done our job. We called out whatever. There is. I mean, I don't feel like a statistic. I don't feel like I ever got to the point where I was like, I'm just another number.
Because
I'm
she
just
was
another
going to do what she was
person.
going to do.
That's right. There was no stopping me in doing what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it did make my situation worse. But
Because in that sense, I wonder if they thought, well, she's going back.
that's it.
Like, we can pull her away, but if she's making contact
That's
and going
right.
back, what
She's
do
just
you
gonna
want us to
keep going
do?
back.
Keep her tied now?
That's right. We'll tie up the victim.
But I
and
get what
whatever
you're
we
saying. Yes, because
Yeah.
I think the same thing. Yes, it is.
Yes,
But I also get because I don't like being told what to do.
that's right.
So when you're doing what you're doing,
Everything that you went through was put on you as if it was your decision.
Oh, 100%.
yeah, no
And I
adult
think
stepped in and
that's-
reined you in and said,
There are
this...
still adults in my life who don't understand why I made the decisions I made. And I'm like, because I didn't make those
I don't think
decisions.
anybody sat you down either as a child and said,
No.
hey, what's going on? Why are you doing... Like, just having that appropriate discussion with you to figure out what the bottom line is here,
Yeah.
to then see why you're doing what you're doing,
Yeah.
to say, we can help you with
Yes.
this.
No,
Not
nothing.
taking this,
Other
taking
than
this,
this
taking
one
this.
counsellor who, like I say, she finally got to a point where she felt she could step in.
She broke through.
But it took a long time. But no, and that's just it. And I don't expect anyone to understand until you've experienced something you don't understand it. I get that. But yeah, there are still adults who go,
And it's
can't
easy for us to
comprehend.
judge.
Yeah.
It's easy for us to say it should have been done.
it's so easy on the outside
Yeah.
to be like, why didn't you just leave?
Yeah.
Why didn't you just
Because
tell
apparently the
someone?
statistics of people in DV are
Yeah.
like they leave 7 times
Yeah.
and come back
That's right.
before they actually leave
And I mean, the
for good.
amount of arguments that Ricky and I had where I was like, I'm done, get out of my house, just leave. The amount of time we had the police rock up.
Because if
to
they
remove
leave,
him,
when
like,
they leave, they've got no safety net. It's better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. It's easier to know his next move than wonder how the fuck am I going to feed my kids tomorrow.
Exactly.
It's easy to know he's going to withhold money if he gambles, drinks and does this, but I'd rather know that I can get $10
That's it. I can take
than
out what I
nothing.
need. Or more so, I would rather spend what I need to spend on that food and cop the abuse when there's not what he wants.
Yeah.
Rather than have nothing. That's
Yeah.
right.
But again, he's giving me something. He's giving me something for this anyway. So
Yeah.
he's a good dad. He just hits me sometimes.
Yeah. He just puts holes in some of the
But
walls.
we're good. We're
But
still
yeah,
going on holidays,
that's
for
right.
God's sake.
Which we did. We went to Perth every year. You know, we came to Sydney at one
Yeah.
stage. Like we did. We went on annual holidays and we did
Because
things.
as parents, we hide things so well.
Of course.
Your kids didn't even know. Sometimes kids don't even know how broke we are.
That's right.
Because
We talked about this the other
we
week.
go, we didn't realise how broke. My kids, and don't get me wrong, we're not povo.
Yeah.
But there's sometimes when we've got nothing, come
Yeah.
day for a payday, and they've got no idea.
Yeah.
Because I'm having on a training night, Tuesday or Thursday night when we're training, we're having toasted sandwiches.
And I think that's the best thing out.
They think it's an easy dinner.
Yeah.
You would never know. My
That's
kids,
right.
my
Mine
kids
the
think
same.
I've got a stash of money somewhere.
Yeah.
And my son keeps saying, so just let us know when we're allowed to open up all this money. And I'm like, we don't have any money.
Yeah, it's not there. And they're like,
Because
yeah,
they have never known.
Good
They
show,
have
Mum.
never
Yeah.
known that we are broke.
That's right.
They don't have to tell
right.
them.
That's
None of
right.
their business.
I mean, I tell my kids all the time, we got no money, but they don't take it
no,
seriously.
I
They
know. That's
never-
what I say. No, I've got no money.
That's right. And you know what? The
Because
amount
it's
of
not
times,
their business to know that.
No, and the amount of times I'm like, oh, you know, because one of them would be like, oh, can we get this or can we get that? I'd be like, I've told you, we've got no money this week. But then I'll go to the shop and I'll get bread and milk and, you know,
Yeah.
I've spent $20
Yeah.
and they're like, I thought you said I had no money.
Yeah.
So they don't believe
Yeah.
it when you
Because
say
really-
that.
They don't
when
have
you-
a concept.
No,
And
they
really,
don't
what are you
have
going to say to them?
concept of-
We've got no money to pay the bills. They're going to
Exactly.
go, oh, you're going to put fear into them.
Exactly. So I might
What's the
have
point?
$20 to spend on the basics, like you
Yeah.
say, for toasted sandwiches.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I've got $5,000 in the account.
No, that's
but
right.
they think, obviously, that there's always a backup. It's fine. And they should be able to think that. They're children.
Secretly, we're millionaires.
Yeah.
They're just putting us through this humble stage in life at the moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're just learning lessons.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
learning to be real. Exactly.
So this is our last question.
Yep.
So here we go.
Oh, God.
For anyone listening,
Yes.
who may be in an unsafe relationship or dealing with past trauma, what would you want them to hear from you today?
I suppose, like, you want to say leave. Like, I want to sit there and go, just leave. But I know it's not that simple. I know it's not as simple as, okay, I'm going to pack a bag and go. But get yourself to that point. Get yourself to the point. Even if you have to remind yourself every single day. Remind yourself in the good times. Be miserable in the good times, because you need to feel the hurt in the good times to realise that the hurt is there. You might be having a great day at the beach, like everything's fine, but you know that when you get home, something's going to get thrown at you, or you're going to get pushed, or one of the kids might get in the way. And you have to remind yourself. And that's, I got to that point of, even in the good times, going, this isn't okay. Like, this is pretend and it's not real. And get yourself to the point where you're constantly reminding yourself of the bad times, so that you can finally go, enough's enough. Because there will be one argument or one tantrum or one big thing that's finally going to make you realise it. But you have to have had the build-up previously to feel it, to really feel it.
Because you might not get that next time.
No.
We've got too many deaths already.
That's right.
At the moment.
That's right. So just like now, just start reminding yourself of how bad it is, even when it's good. Even when you're sitting at the park watching the kids play and he's out there running around kicking a ball. Yeah, but he also kicked you in the teeth yesterday. Like, remember that.
Important.
Remember that. Don't sit there and go, oh, but he's such a good dad. Look at them play. And go, he's not. Even when he's a good dad, he's not, because he's showing them the abuse to you. Like, he's even if he's not doing it in front of them, he's tearing you apart, and you're not being the person that you can be for them. So I mean, obviously, I'm using a parent as an example. There are people who aren't parents. There are people who don't have kids, but again, do you want to make it out alive? Because they don't.
Yeah,
so
I
many
think
don't.
that literally just gave me goosebumps.
Yeah,
Because I feel like every second day we hear of a woman being bashed to death. She's
What do
being
you mean every
burned.
second day? It's every day.
Yeah. But I'm saying on the news, this is what we're hearing.
We're not
This
here
is
daily.
this is where the statistics, what we're
Yeah.
hearing. It's like
Yeah.
every second, and even that's too much.
Yeah.
Every second day is too much. We're hearing
Every
on the
week
news.
is too much. Every month
That's
is too
someone's
much.
mother
like,
and sister.
Yeah. So
When
that's
I
what
look
say.
at that, I've got two sisters.
Yeah.
Every second day could be either one of them.
Exactly. So no,
That's a
remind
fucking
yourself,
joke.
Don't get absorbed in the good times. Like that's the hardest part. The hardest part is getting absorbed in the good, because that's why they do it. They do that. They push and they shove and they hurt and they do all these things, and then the next day they will be the best version
That's
of themselves.
love bombing. And then you become trauma bonded.
It's right.
Yeah.
It's so manipulative.
I
and
won't
you've
do it
gotta-
again. I love you so much. I'm so
Exactly,
sorry until it
exactly.
happens.
Or I was asleep. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the biggest one. Remind yourself in those good moments, when you catch yourself smiling and going, oh, you know, he's such a good person, remind yourself that he's not, because the next big one, the next big argument has to be your way out. Like, it's got to be.